I'm going to start. Sefer Devarim opens up with Moshe Rabbeinu addressing the Klal Yisrael, and this is at the very end of his life. Rashi explains that there's 1 month left to his life, and he begins a long series of rebuke, a long series of tochacha, everything that the Jews did wrong for 40 years in the Midbar. Now it's clear that Moshe Rabbeinu had many issues, many points, because he lays out a very clear list of many things the Klal Yisrael did wrong. And Rashi makes the observation that he waited until this moment. This was 1 month till he was going to leave this earth. This was the last opportunity. And Rashi explains, where did he learn this from? Says Rashi, he learned this from Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu said to Ruvain, I waited all my years. I waited until now to give you musar, to give you tochacha, rebuke. And it wasn't until he's about to leave this earth that he gave Ruvain rebuke. And Yaakov said, why is it that I waited all this time? I was afraid that if I would give you rebuke earlier, you would leave and join Esav, my brother. And therefore I didn't give you rebuke till now. Now, no more time. If I don't do it now, I can't ever do it. So therefore Yaakov waited till the end of his life to give Ruvain tochacha, to give him rebuke. And therefore Moshe Rabbeinu learned the same from Yaakov, and he also only chastised the Jewish nation at the end of his life. And that's how Rashi explains this in pasuk, and that's how Rashi explains Moshe Rabbeinu's action. But if you think about that Rashi, I think it should be very, very difficult to understand, and I'll explain to you why. If you can imagine the relationship between Yaakov Avinu and Ruvain, it's hard to imagine. Yaakov Avinu is the Galador, Ruvain is a loyal Talmud, he's one of the Shiftei Ka, and what Yaakov Avinu is saying is, if I gave you rebuke, if I chastised you, I was afraid you would leave, what do you mean? Not just you would become a member of Esav's group. You would leave the entire derech, and you become a member of Esav's group, and that Rashi is very, very difficult to understand. And number one, everything that Yaakov Avinu said was with tremendous love. There was a bond, there was a connection of father to son, but more than just father to son, Yaakov Avinu was the Rebbe, he was a Gadol Hador. Ruvain looked at him as his mentor, as his Rebbe, and every word that Yaakov Avinu said, Ruvain accepted as total emes. Why would these words of rebuke potentially have drawn him away, pushed him away, that Yaakov was actually afraid he might join Esav's group? It sounds very difficult to understand. The tremendous love of father to son, the tremendous care with which Yaakov gave those words over, and more than that, Ruvain wanted to hear these words because he wanted to grow. This was his Rebbe. Why would those words have pushed him away? What was Yaakov Avinu's fear? What was Moshe Rabbeinu's fear? And to understand this Rashi and what Rashi is sharing with us, I think we need a little perspective on the way we human beings work. And to share with you that perspective, let me bring you back to a little bit of history. The Civil War began in 1861. Now, by all accounts, the North should have wiped out the South in but a matter of weeks. The North outmanned, outgunned. The South was very, very weak. And there was no question in everyone's mind that the North would win that war in a very short time. But that's not exactly what happened. What happened was quite the opposite. Battle after battle, the South won. Battle after battle, the North was being driven back. And Lincoln, who was a tremendous leader, found himself in an incredibly difficult situation. They had far more arms, far more men, and yet they were losing battle after battle. And this went on for over 2 years. The first turning point was the Battle of Gettysburg. Battle of Gettysburg, 2 years after the start of the war in 1863, suddenly the North won, but it was a major victory. Lee, who was the general for the South, had really been destroyed. His armies were pushed back against the Potomac, the river was filled, and there was no question that the war could have ended at that point. Lincoln immediately telegraphed General Meade, who was the North general, attack immediately. You have Lee in your grips. He's pinned against the Potomac. His men can't escape. There's no way he'll be able to resist. If you attack now, you'll win and will destroy the South. The war will be over. But Meade did not attack. Lincoln sent telegrams. He sent messengers. He sent every sort of message that he could to get Meade to attack, and Meade would not budge for an entire week. Finally, the river, the Potomac waters went down. Lee crossed the river, and the Civil War continued for over another 2 years. 600,000 soldiers died, And Lincoln realized that Meade failed. Not only did he fail, he lost this golden moment. And I'd like to share with you a letter that Abraham Lincoln wrote to General Meade. And this is how it reads. Executive Mansion, Washington, July 14th, 1863. Dear Major General Meade, I am very, very grateful to you for the magnificent success you gave the cause of the country at Gettysburg, and I am sorry now to be the author of the slightest pain to you, but I was in such deep distress myself that I could not restrain some expression of it. My dear General, I do not believe you appreciate the magnitude of the misfortune involved in Lee's escape. It was within our easy grasp, and to have closed upon him in connection with your other late successes would have ended the war. As it is, the war will be prolonged indefinitely. Your golden opportunity is gone, and I am distressed immeasurably because of it. I beg you will not consider this as a prosecution or persecution of yourself. As you have learned that I was dissatisfied, I have thought it best kindly to tell you why. Yours very truly, Abraham Lincoln. Now, very, very carefully worded letter. Very, very graciously, but clearly critical. What do you think Meade's reaction to receiving that letter was? Well, I'd like to share with you, you'll never know. Because that letter was never sent. That letter was found sealed in Lincoln's desk drawer after he died because he never sent the letter. And Lincoln had one policy: never criticize a man. You criticize a man, you destroy his honor, you destroy the human being. And Lincoln had one policy, and that was never condemn, never complain, never criticize. And the simple reality is that his Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, said about him, now just as a little bit of background, Edwin Stanton hated Lincoln before he took the job. He looked at him like he called him a monkey. But once he took the job of Secretary of War, he was so amazed by Lincoln's personality. On the deathbed of Lincoln, Edwin Stanton said these words, "Here lies the finest ruler of men." Abraham Lincoln mastered this skill because one of the main ingredients of it was never to criticize, never to condemn, never to blame another person. And Dale Carnegie, in his fantastic book, which I highly, highly recommend, and the book is called How to Win Friends and Influence People. I was a high school Rebbe for 15 years. I would demand that the guys read it. I would teach people skills. The book is a phenomenal read. I used to be a little bit shy about mentioning it publicly, but then I heard Rav Miller Zatzal mention it as it is an absolute read. If you want to succeed in business, you want to succeed as a human being, you want to succeed as a parent, as a spouse, read the book. It's a phenomenal book. But here's the point. Chapter 1, do not criticize. And he goes over point after point after point. Criticism is destructive. Criticism is damaging. Criticism leads to no good. And that's the main point he makes in chapter 1 and really chapter 2. And I believe that's exactly what that book, one of the specialties of that book is. And if you'd like to understand why it is that criticism is so destructive, it's because we human beings are allergic, we hate it. You see, it's received by me as an attack on me. It's an attack on the person. And the Orchos Tzaddikim explains to us, if I attack you, imagine I stand up, I start pummeling, I start punching you. It's natural, it's instinctive, you're going to stand up in self-defense. Much like if I physically attack you, it's instinctual for you to retaliate. So too if I attack you verbally. If I attack you with words, it's natural for you to just respond in such. Criticism is 100% an attack. It's an attack on the person. It's destructive, it's damaging. And the reason why it's so destructive is because it is an attack on the human being. And invariably what it results in is fighting back and causing rifts, and it never accomplishes anything. I believe that's exactly why Yaakov Avinu was afraid. You see, the bigger you are in the person's eyes, the more damaging the criticism is. Yaakov Avinu was a towering giant to Ruvain. And when a towering giant looks down that finger and says, "You messed up, you failed," that's such a powerful attack on the person. It's so devastating that Ruvain would have had no choice but to rebel against, to fight against it. And again, Yaakov Avinu was afraid that he might go so far as to leave the camp of Yaakov, go to Esav, even though there's such love, even though Ruvain wanted the words, even though Ruvain knew he was wrong, and even though Ruvain wore sackcloth and ashes because he was doing tshuva for that chait. Nevertheless, Yaakov Avinu was afraid to give him tochra, to give him direct rebuke, because it's such a powerful force, such an attack on the human being, that instinctively, against his will, Reuven would have no choice but to fight back, and it would cause the opposite reaction. That's why Yaakov Avinu waited, that's why Moshe Rabbeinu waited, and that is one of the great secrets of success in life. There are 3 rules to criticism, and you have to remember the 3. They're pretty easy to remember. Here they are. Rule number 1, don't do it. Rule number 2, don't do it. Rule number 3, don't do it. And if you remember those 3 rules, I guarantee you'll be far more successful. Now, that's very easy for me to say. The problem is that we all know it, and nevertheless, we all do it all the time. It's an amazing thing. We human beings can be so intelligent, so well thought out, except when it comes to our own lives. When it comes to the thick and thin of our own lives, suddenly it's out the window. And the righting reflex jumps into operation, and I start pointing the finger, and maybe I'm polite, maybe I'm nice, maybe not, but I'm very, very strong in my criticism. And I want to give you an example. There are multitudes of examples, and I don't want to limit it to this, but I want to share with you one example. Here we go. A man comes home after a long day in kollel, or work, wherever it may be. He comes into the apartment, and he's exhausted. He plops himself down on the couch, and he opens the paper. His 3 kids are running around the apartment, pulling things down, running, etc. His wife is in the kitchen. He says, "Hi, dear. Hi, dear. Hi." He's reading the paper, and she's cooking dinner, and she's watching what's going on. He's sitting there. That guy's sitting there. The kids are ripping apart the apartment. I'm sitting here busy cooking. I'm preparing dinner, and he's just going to sit there. He's just going to sit there. Well, pretty soon the steam starts coming out of her ears, and before you know it, she's red in the face. She walks over, and she points a finger and says, "All right, mister, up off that couch. You're either taking care of the kids, or you're cooking dinner, but you are not sitting there any longer." Okay, he gets up and he helps with the kids. Okay, here's the question. Was she correct in what she did? Was she right? Now, I don't think anyone would disagree that he was, kind of missing it. Meaning, you got to be a mensch guy. If your wife is in the kitchen cooking and the kids are ripping apart the apartment, get up and help. So there's no question that he was wrong. Many women would say she was a hero for standing up for her rights. And most people would agree, that there's something mighty wrong with that picture. But I'd like to share with you what she did, inadvertently, but what she did. So let's play out the scenario. So, okay, anyway, he takes care of the kids a little bit, and they all sit down to eat dinner, and they give the kids baths, and after an hour or 2, and finally all the kids are in, and he's sitting on the couch, and she sits down next to him. As she sits down next to him, he kind of slides away. So she slides a little closer. He slides further away. And she slides a little closer. And he slides further away. And for the life of her, she can't figure, I don't get it. What's his problem? Why is he so distant? I don't get it. And would you like to know why he's so distant? Because for the past 2 hours, in his brain, like a tape recorder was playing the tape. All right, mister, up off the couch. You're either taking care of the kids and doing dinner. You're not sitting anymore. All right, mister, up off the couch. Up off the couch. You're either taking care of dinner or you're taking care of the kids. Up off the couch. And he's realizing one single reality. Oh my goodness, I married a drill sergeant. So here's the point. Was she right? Obviously he was wrong, but her mistake was she damaged the relationship. And it's obvious when you're looking on the outside of it, but it feels so justified, it feels so correct, and it's so destructive, because the most damaging thing in all human relationships is that pointing the finger, standing over the person, that critical eye, and that is one of the most destructive forces probably in all human relations. Now, what should she do in that case? I'm going to let you listen to the marriage seminar. I'm not going to give it all away. You go to theshmuz.com. There are a number of versions of it, the original version or the Marriage Transformation Bootcamp. That one's on the homepage of the marriage seminar, as you can look on the major series. I'll explain to you there what communication means. But communication is not, all right, mister, up off that couch. But here's the point. The point is her mistake was not that she was wrong. She was 100% right. But criticism is damaging, is destructive, and even if you're justified, even if you're right, it destroys human relations. It's a very, very destructive force. Okay, now, I've said enough. I would like to ask Oshi to start moderating and take over. Please feel free to ask questions. Questions should be pretty obvious here, how to deal with this and what to do, but please feel free to raise your hand. Oshi will call on you. You can raise your hand and ask. We have a number of questions that have been texted and etc. But Ushi, I'm turning over the mic. You got it.
Okay. Without criticism.
Right.
Okay, so everybody in the share, as Rabbi Shav said earlier, we're trying to make the share very interactive. It's all about questions. Obviously, the topic is about criticism, but we're open to all questions. We did get a bunch of email before, so I can start with that. But again, anybody who wants to ask a question, please text me or raise your hand, and we'll try to cover everybody's questions. So I'll start with the most obvious question, and then we'll go through it, okay? And we'll see how interactive people are. Question that struck me interesting here tonight is as follows. I'm gonna start first. It's a long question, okay? It's a story.
I spoke shortly, so you can go long.
Yeah, so I should have also like 10 minutes. Chas v'shalom. I am an NCSY Baal Tshuva. I became from in high school. In Israel, I was very plugged in and stark. Yet my zets for growth minimized during college, but I am still shomer mitzvot and learning Torah daily. I got married a few years after college, and a year after marriage, I became revigorated and inspired in learning, spiritual growth, and personal tefillot. While I love my wife and everything she contributes to our marriage, she's not plugged in, not in the same way. She doesn't learn Torah. She doesn't daven at all. I wish she was more tznius, but supports my time in learning and makes our Shabbos table Suda versus just a meal in order to inspire myself and our children. That said, it bothers me that she is far more modern than I would like her to be. She comes from a very modern family, and so I feel like I'm the black sheep when all I want to do is the Ratzon of Hashem. What does one do in such a situation?
Okay, so let's go through the no-brainers. Don't criticize, but that should be obvious. But really, let me focus on something I think it's very important to understand over here. A husband and wife have a relationship. And that relationship is defined by Chazal as Re'im Ahuvim, best friends who love each other. Best friends who love each other. That relationship is not Rebbe to student, it's not mentor to Talmud, it's equal partners, best friends with different roles, but best friends who love each other. And the minute that either partner steps into a different role, what they're doing is stepping out of their role of a married partner and they're entering in a different role. And let me give you a very clear example. I want you to imagine for a minute the following. It's Yom Kippur Day, 2 o'clock, and a woman comes home to her apartment, and there on the couch she sees her husband. A ham sandwich in this hand, and a cigar in the other hand, chomping on a sandwich, smoking the cigar. What does she do? She stands up and says, Shmuel, stop it! It's Yom Kippur! It's a ham sandwich! Smoking a cigar! What's wrong? Would you stop what you're doing right now? Now, obviously, she's right? Because it's Yom Kippur, ham, cigar, doesn't quite belong. And while she may be right, what she really did was she stepped out of the bounds of her role. She just stepped into a new role. She's no longer a friend, no longer Re'im Ahuvim. She's now become the mentor, the Rebbe, the boss. I don't know what she became, but she became something other than an equal partner in this matter. You see, friends support friends. Friends are helpful to friends. Friends work on things together. The minute you step out of that role and enter into a new role called mentor, Rebbe, teacher, whatever it may be, you've now abdicated your role as married partner and now taken on a new role. Well, guess what? You wreck the relationship. Because the minute you take on a new role, you're no longer doing what you should do. So, the long and short of it is that if your wife isn't where you'd like to be, number one, I have to ask you a question. Your seat in Gan Eden is based on what? Based on what you do. Your job is to grow, to accomplish as much as you can. If you're the shining light, hopefully your wife will follow. If she does, great. If she doesn't, it's also great. Your job is to take care of you. And this is a tremendous concept that spouses have to learn. My responsibility is me. I have to grow, I have to accomplish. That's my responsibility. I have to keep my eyes on my side of Mechitza and not worry myself about the other side of the Mechitza. Now, if you want to do something effective, you can daven, that's certainly fine. You could offer your wife all sorts of opportunities to learn and grow and etc. And then you stop. Because anything beyond that, you've left your role of best friends who love each other. You've now entered a new role. And to be honest with you, if your wife is supportive of what you're doing and you say she makes the house into a Shabbos, into real the way Shabbos is supposed to be, I don't see why that's impeding on you at all. You'd like her to be different. That's not your affair. Your affair is you. Her affair is her. Your partner is in this thing called marriage. and you're not the Rebbe, not the mentor. So the bottom line is, you have to remember your role, and you have to remember what you're supposed to be doing, and not jump into another role. So that's what I would say, long and short of it.
Okay. Beautiful answer. Again, anybody wants to ask questions, raise your hand. I have two questions here. I'm going to put them together because they're really similar. My wife needs to lose weight as she is borderline diabetic. I encourage her to make good choices with her diet, but should I say anything at all or not? Second question. Certain things my wife does drives me crazy. We've discussed them before, but to no avail, she continues doing them. Every time I bring it up, it becomes like a third world war. I'm not allowed to say anything to my spouse, even if the issue makes me really miserable.
Why can't you say, you blew it, you messed up, you're fat, you're ugly, you know why you can't do it?
Put a lock on the refrigerator.
I'll put a lock on the refrigerator. That's another good idea. That's another very clever approach. So let me explain to you I had a fellow at, I was once giving a Shalom Bayis, it was a Shabbaton, and the topic was Shalom Bayis, and a fellow came over to me afterwards, and he said, Rabbi, here's my problem. I love my wife, I love my kids, but we have 3 kids now, and I don't know how to say this, but my wife, she had the first baby, she put on some weight, she didn't lose that. Had a second baby, put on some more weight, didn't lose that. Had a third baby, and she's now 40 pounds overweight. And he explained to me, he's a physician, and he works all day in a hospital, a lot of nurses, young, slim, and he doesn't want to look at them, he wants to have eyes for his wife, and it's a problem. And he said, I offered everything to my wife. I offered a nutritionist, I offered her, a personal trainer, and she just won't do it. What do I do, Rabbi, what do I do? So what did I say to him? When I said, young man, you have 2 choices. You either embrace your wife as she is, or you suffer. You either say to yourself, this is where she's at and I accept her fully, or you suffer. Why? Because I'll share with you a little secret. I don't believe that any woman is 40 pounds overweight and says, that's great, I'm so happy with it. I'm sure she's much aware of it, and I'm sure that she would like to change, but guess what? Change is difficult. And right now, for whatever reason, she's not ready, she doesn't feel she has what it takes to do that, and any attempt that you're going to make to push her, to force her, is going to backfire. Number 1, it's going to wreck the relationship, and number 2, any motivation that she has because of your great marriage is going to dissolve because you're not going to have a great marriage. So your choice is either to embrace her as she is or suffer, because other than that there are no choices. And this single idea, I think, is one of the most important in the success of marriage. My job is not to change my spouse. My job is not to improve my spouse. I'm not responsible for my spouse. My job is to serve my Creator as I'm supposed to. Now, in the case of this, where it's a health issue, right, it becomes much more serious, and it's certainly appropriate to sit down and discuss and offer every sort of remedy possible. And again, whatever that might be, exercise, diet, make things easier, take all types of foods out of the house, whatever you can do to offer to make it easier is great, and for you to be a support, and you should hold the pom-poms and cheer her on. But anything beyond that is going to A, destroy the relationship, B, is going to utterly backfire, because all you're going to do is create ill will and create anger and create a tremendously divisive environment. And unfortunately, it's very difficult for us human beings to learn that lesson, and that is that I can barely change myself. I surely can't change anybody else. And by the way, I can't change myself. I can tell you this firsthand. There are many, many things that I wish I could change. Many, many things that I've been working on for years, for decades now. I change them a little bit. But when you're talking about real personality issues or real things, it's not so simple. It's not so easy. I'm a big advocate for change, don't get me wrong. I said this last week, I'll say it again. I learn Musar every day, at least 30 minutes, maybe more. And that's all about change and personal growth. And I'm a tremendous advocate for that. And at the same time, you have to recognize that real change is very gradual, very slow. And it's very, very difficult for me to change me. It's impossible for me to change you. So the bottom line is you have to either embrace it or suffer.
Okay, let's take a live question now.
Yep.
Dan, you're on.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Shafir. I really gained a lot from your marriage seminar, and I highly recommend it to everyone.
Great. You didn't realize this is another marriage seminar here, right? I didn't realize it either, but okay. Good. I'm glad you found it.
My question is, what do you do if you've made all of the mistakes that you're saying that you're cautioning against, and now people in my life remember all my criticisms, and I don't even consider myself so critical, but the things I have said apparently have made a very deep impression, and they repeat them back to me years later. What do you do now?
Okay, so it depends who the people in your life you're referring to. Your wife, your kids, who are you referring to? I don't want to get too particular, but...
primarily my wife, but...
okay. All right, so the rule of thumb is that relationships change slowly, but once you change the spiral of the relationship, it starts spiraling slowly up, and it becomes a totally different environment. Meaning, if you take a hiatus from criticisms, more than a stop, period, nothing, not just a short hiatus, but you permanently eradicate it, what you'll find is your wife will slowly start to expect different things from you. She won't be expecting the criticism. See, what happens is we become experts at what our spouse does wrong. It's usually, typically, it's personality driven, meaning I'm very neat and my spouse is not. I'm on time and she's not. Whatever it may be, it's typically, it's my personality strength and her personality weakness that becomes the point of contention. And then I become so acutely aware of it, I become an expert at everything she does wrong, and I see it so glaringly, and only for our benefit, only for our good. I point it out and I see it, but I can't help but see it. So what happens is the spouse begins to expect it and begins, I don't have to tell you how much of the resistance begins building up and how much of the negative spiral begins. So what happens when you stop doing it is, initially it's like, wow, strange, it's stopped. And once you do that for a while, suddenly she begins realizing it. You see, your role as a spouse is one, that's support, friend. A friend means I'm a friend, I'm a support, I'm a help. I tell this to guys all the time, you have to be deaf, dumb, and blind when it comes to things your spouse does wrong. I'm supposed to be deaf, dumb, and blind? Yes, deaf, dumb, and blind. Why? Because if not, you are going to pay the price like there's no yesterday. Why? Because there's no question your spouse is going to do things differently than you. You might be risk averse, she may be a risk taker. You may be very punctual, she may be very late. There's going to be grave differences between every human being is different one from the other. And there's so many categories of personality types that it's impossible for you to not to be very different than your spouse. And because of that, invariably, there are going to be a lot of things that your spouse does that irk you, that bother you. And because you're living in such close proximity, and because you're so close, you can't help but notice them, and it can't help but bother you. The only thing you have to do is, as a friend, you have to become deaf, dumb, and blind. Train your tongue not to criticize, and if anything, you're the support, you're the helper, you're the one behind your spouse. If your spouse knows that you're behind her, you're with her, again, we all make mistakes, and they're not irreversible. It takes a little while, but I think if you start stopping and become much more of a support, Mitzvah Hashem, it'll change, and you'll have the cycle of the relationship will change.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, I have two questions there. They're on the opposite ends of the stream, but I'm going to ask them together because I think they're similar, okay?
Okay.
Here we go. My wife gets dressed modest sometimes. The dresses she buys is not sneakers to the eye. It's very eye-catching, and I can't let her wear it. I tell her in a very nice way that she shouldn't get offended. However, it doesn't seem to work. How can I tell her in a way that she should accept it? That's question A.
Stop.
B.
Bushy, I got to stop you there. Nuh-uh. Let's stop
Question
right there.
B.
Yeah, question B. Yeah.
Completely the opposite. In every angle.
No,
So
let's stop. I want to take B
Okay.
separately. Give me a chance on this one.
Yeah.
Okay, so watch this. I had a young man who called me up. He's married about 6 months, and a very similar issue. He said, I can't get her. She's wearing dresses, skirts above the knee, and it's so inappropriate, and it's so bothering. And how do I tell her? What should I say? So I said, young man. By the way, when you get to a certain age, you get to call other people young man, and it's all right. Anyway, I said, young man, let me ask you a question. Your wife went to how many years of Beis Yaakov schooling? The answer is 12. Okay, very good. And what did they stress over and over and over to her 1,000 times, probably a year? The length of the skirt and where it should be, etc. I want to ask you a question. Do you think by now she knows where the length of the skirt should be? Probably yes. So you're telling her is not going to be exactly novel. So here's the question. Why is it that she's not doing what she should be doing? And the answer is because women dress for women. It's very much a social issue. It's very much fitting in her friends or her peer group. That's how they dress. And it's a huge, huge issue for her right now. And for whatever reason, she does not have the strength, the moral fortitude to resist. And the peer pressure is too great. And that's why she's succumbing. So she clearly knows it's wrong. Yet it's too great a temptation for her to resist. What do you think is going to happen when you tell her that her skirt is too long? Oh, my skirt is too long. I never knew that. I doubt that's what's going to happen. What's going to happen is there are going to be many tears, a tremendous amount of pain, and any time for the rest of your marriage that you're ever going to want to discuss anything related to tznius or maybe even religion at all is going to be poisoned, because that pain is going to remain there, and that pain of your criticizing and not accepting her, because she knows where she's at. And she feels she's not ready to change. And when you look down that finger and point that accusing finger, and even if you do it nicely, what you're doing is you're saying the words, you're not good enough, you're not acceptable, and it's going to be ill-received. So I said to him, I have a feeling she knows what's supposed to be done. Your job is to leave her alone, and hopefully you build a marriage, she'll grow, you'll grow, and she'll get to a point where she's able to do it, but don't say a word. So that's the bottom line. The bottom line is it's not your business to look. It's not your business to see. You take care of the length of your pants. Don't worry about the length of your wife's skirts. It's not your business. Isn't that funny for a rabbi to say that? But
interesting. Let's go on a different angle over here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the person themselves. What should a person do if they receive criticism? Should they just swallow it, or should they say they don't appreciate it?
So it depends if they're a tzaddik or not. The highest level, I mean, let me first, a little background. The Chovos HaLevavos explains to us.
Same story with Reb Chaim Kanievsky, with somebody being Mavayashim. Said that if you want to broke with our kids, isn't that a story with Reb Chaim?
I don't recall it, but it sounds appropriate. But let me share with you something the Chovos HaLevavos says. I had a teacher, and I think I was in 3rd grade, I had a teacher who taught us how to take a compliment. The teacher said, when someone compliments you, don't squirm, don't look away, look them in the eye and say, thank you very much. Now that's an important life lesson, how to take a compliment. But I never had a teacher who taught us how to take an insult. But the Chovos HaLevavos teaches us how to take an insult. He says, when someone rips into you, when someone embarrasses you, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to turn your eyes heavenwards and say, thank you Hashem for revealing a little of my many flaws. Because you're supposed to understand that any pain that you suffer has been directed, Min Hashemayim. No human being can help you, no human being can harm you, and if a human being decided to embarrass you, that pain was coming to you. If that person wasn't there, you would have tripped and dropped a plate of hot soup, you would have fallen somewhere. That embarrassment was something you were destined to suffer. Now, I didn't ask that nudnik to be the one to bring it to me. And at the end of the day, he's but the loudspeaker who brings the message, but there's someone behind speaking into the mic. Now, that's hashkafically how to deal with it. Now, the problem is that we human beings are a lot more in the real world, and it's very few people who can really do that. Again, the best effort, your best bet is to just not respond, to ignore it. That's, you reach that level, you shine in the world to come like the sun in midday. That's how Chazal describe it. It's a very, very difficult midah to attain. But either way, I want to mention something that I mentioned last week from the Sefer Chinuch. And that is, he says, the main reason why the Torah warns us about lo sikom, not taking revenge, is because when I take revenge, I'm imputing powers to man that he doesn't have. If I take revenge against you, I'm pretending that you can harm me. And that's a lack of emunah. I'm supposed to understand no human being can help me, no human being can harm me. That pain was coming to me, and therefore not taking revenge is a basic of emunah. However, again, in the real world, the simple reality is we human beings are very sensitive and we're very easily hurt. So it's certainly natural and normal to respond. If you're able to ask a person to stop doing it for the future, that's certainly wise to do, because it's very few people who can be omed that nasayan and not want to respond back. But, again, that's just human nature that likely we're going to respond. And again, you have to do your best. But if you're able to diffuse it, that's certainly the best. And certainly if you're able to not say anything, your reward in the world to come is tremendous. But again, at the end of the day, we human beings are human beings, and we're very, very sensitive, and it's incredibly painful when we're criticized. So that's, I guess, what I'd say.
Okay, let's go on a different angle over here. In-laws.
Actually, nobody has questions. Everybody's here. No one raises a hand. No one has questions.
Maybe they're all sleeping.
So she wake him up. Tell a joke. Something. Wake him up. Make him. Huh?
Come on, guys. Everybody who asks a question, Rabbi Schaefer's giving out $100 a question.
And Ushi's going to pay.
We are Baruch Hashem happily married for 2 years now. My in-laws would like us to come very often. I don't enjoy going there for the weekends. My husband understands it. I think he does enjoy going. How can I tell them I don't feel comfortable going there?
Wow, how can you? Don't do it. Don't do it. You'll pay for it for the rest of your life. Don't do it. Don't tell them. Again, how often you go, and that's between you and your husband, and work that out between you. But don't ever tell them. Was that the question? How does she tell the in-laws? Was she?
How did she express the in-laws? As much as you're saying not to say.
Don't do it. Don't do it. There are 10,544 excuses in the book, and if you don't have enough, I'll give you a few more. You can manage many ways of not going too often without having to actually say damaging, destructive words that you're going to regret for the rest of your life. I guarantee, no matter how tactfully you say it, no matter how carefully you word it, it will be incredibly painful and incredibly insulting to your in-laws, and for the rest of your marriage, it's going to be a very raw spot. Make excuses. Like, again, you and your husband have to determine what's best for whatever reason. If you find that you're really uncomfortable, so again, there are many excuses. Find lots of them and just be polite, but don't ever say that, please.
Rabbi Schaefer, the one point, maybe with in-laws you could do that, but let's say, for example, with people that you can do that with a spouse, you do have to sometimes say it, not criticism, but do have to say it. Is there a way of saying it that instead of just don't do it, you can be forever a martyr also?
Right. No. You see, well, it depends what you're asking. In other words, meaning, should I be harmful and destructive and damaging? No. Are there times when I have to express things? Absolutely. And to be a shmata is not appropriate, is not correct. And to be a martyr is not correct. But there's nothing gained by being insulting and nothing gained by saying hurtful words. So, I don't know how to say that other than... Here, I'll give you a good for instance that I talk about often in marriage. In my house, there's a rule. My wife asks the kids how something tastes. And a number of years ago, one of the kids said, "Why don't you ask Abba? Abba's right here." And my wife said, "Because he'll lie. He'll never tell me it doesn't taste good." If my wife put too much salt in the food, I would never say, why not? I'll tell you a little secret. When a woman gives her husband something to eat and she says, "How does it taste?" And he says, "It doesn't taste so good." What he's saying to her is, it doesn't taste so good. What she hears is, "I'm fat and ugly. I'm unacceptable. I failed." And even though he's not saying those words, and even though he's saying words about the salt or the taste, what she's hearing in very clear words are, "I failed when I tried to produce," and it's very hurtful. I don't know how to say this other than to say it. It really is very hurtful. So you have to use tact. You have to use some people skills. You have to use some understanding of how human beings work. And again, if you cannot say, it's only to your in-laws, you don't have to say it. With your spouse, many times, again, you are a human being, and you do have to have, you have rights, and you certainly have to, stand for what you need. But at the same time, you have to be very careful and very much aware of the impact of your words.
Let's jump to the next question over here before I take a live question.
Yep.
I find this to be an interesting question.
Oh, there are a bunch of live questions. Why don't we take some live questions so I can save my voice?
Okay,
no?
Hold on. Okay, let's go. Rami was first. Rami.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Not so well. A little louder.
I just wanted to ask, is it better now?
Yeah, now it's good. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, if you let's say you're dealing with someone who complains a lot, or someone who's very critical, it's like the type of person who, unfortunately they find fault. So what's some eitzah how to deal with such a person? Because at times it's just like too much, and you don't want to be a shmata. So how do you deal with such a person without creating a fight?
Okay, I have one simple solution that I think, and it's the only one I know of, and certainly certainly in a marriage, but even in any family situation or really any situation like that, the response is as follows: ouch. Ouch. Now women have a tremendous advantage here, because if they cry, it's it. Just cry. But if you can't cry, ouch, and don't say another word. Because you see, likely he's not a creep. Likely he's not obnoxious. What's happening is he doesn't realize that his words are hurtful. But when you say ouch, and you let him know, I'm not attacking you. I'm not saying anything in response. I'm just expressing a simple human ouch, it hurt, ow, that was very hurtful. And I don't say anything. See, we get into trouble when I translate the ouch into the counterattack. And then he attacks me back and forth, and then there's a fight, World War III. If you say something critical of me, and my response is ouch, likely, if you're a mensch, which most likely you are, you'll understand that your words were nasty, your words weren't nice, and hopefully maybe you'll even apologize. Certainly in the future you may be more careful, but it won't escalate. It lets you know very carefully that you have overstepped the bounds, but it doesn't create any hostility and it doesn't create any of the animosity. The problem always comes in when after the ouch, or instead of the ouch, I say you, and I give it back to you because you deserve after you hurt me, but you don't understand that I was hurt because you don't recognize that. All you see is my hostility, so what do? You respond to my hostility with your hostility, and that's how things escalate. If you just break it down to the ouch, he understands his words were harmful. You responded by letting him know that, and you didn't attack him, and then, again, hopefully it resolves in a much better way.
Let's say.
The follow-up. Rami's got the follow-up. The follow-up. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's say, when do I get my $100?
Yeah, Oshi, talk to Oshi.
Okay. But let's say the person doesn't get it. Like sometimes maybe as I'm not speaking of personal situation, but let's say like sometimes people they have a problem or they're just angry at something. Like, is there a way that
I'm telling you, ouch is the best. I don't know of any. The truth be told, there are no great antidotes. The best solution is ouch, because what you're doing is you're not escalating things and you're letting him know that he hurt you. You see, the reason why we're callous is because why do I say things? Because I don't realize they're hurtful. I'm not a nasty guy. I say things, I didn't realize that I was stepping on your toes. I didn't realize I was insulting. I'm not the kind of person who would do it willfully. I did it because I didn't realize. And once you allow me to realize it, hopefully I can stop, I can step back, maybe even apologize and make amends. But the point is, the problem comes in when instead of just allowing me to know that I overstepped my bounds, you become hostile to me, and then I don't realize that I overstepped my bounds. All I see is your hostility to me, and I respond to that, and that's where the trouble comes in. So again, the best idea, I believe, certainly if you could avoid the situation or you could diffuse it, obviously that's better. But if you can't, the ouch, or that sort of approach, I think is the wisest approach, at least that I know of. If you have a better one, let me know.
Hey, no.
Okay.
Thank you, Avrami. Okay, Rabbi Schaefer, a lot of questions are coming in now, text and everything. So let's move it up.
Okay.
This is Dr. Leah Adams.
Okay. Hi.
Rabbi Schaefer. Rabbi, thank you again for some really stimulating points. I think one thing, though, that Rabbi's sort of working on avoiding the negative, like don't say something that's going to hurt somebody. But with the young woman that wrote in that she doesn't like to go to her in-laws, clearly that's a situation that somebody's going to be, God willing, related to their in-laws for many years to come.
Yep.
So it's not just a question of avoiding how to not say something hurtful, but maybe to start to work on thinking on how to make the experience more positive, or something that she can work on a shift in her attitude, because it's a place she's going to be a lot.
Okay, spoken as a true psychologist, and I hear, and I think Coach Menachem in the background will be agreeing, and yes, you that is absolutely true, and it's absolutely correct that so many times I spoke to a woman who hated her mother-in-law for 20 years. For 20 years, hated her mother-in-law, and finally, after 20 years, had a revelation that she, the daughter-in-law, was wrong. Meaning for 20 years she hated her mother-in-law for something her mother-in-law did, and after 20 years she realized, her mother-in-law was right, she was wrong. Okay, so there are many times when we create these toxic environments and we are the spinner of the tail. We make so obviously if you could make it a better situation or realize why you're uncomfortable. But the bottom line is there are times, especially a young kala, young wife, is going to feel uncomfortable in her mother-in-law's house because that's just the reality. Now, hopefully after time she'll get more comfortable, but many times it's not even any bugaboo or any particular issue she has, as much as she just isn't that comfortable. Some people are more shy, some people are more timid, and some people are not as, or they can be different personality types, different style, whatever it may be. So obviously you're right, whatever she could do to improve that, I agree she should try. But again, typically that's a slow process and it takes a long while. And again, the first line of defense is not to do more damage. But you're right, I wholeheartedly agree, and she should try to do whatever she could to improve it. And again, thank you once again for a good solid point.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Hi, hello?
Yeah,
Yes.
hi, how are you?
Hi.
Okay, good. So the basic question is that there's, I know like overall in general, there's, the recommendation that the wife should just be like encouraging and uplifting and positive, and for sure, like, especially as Rabbi Schaefer mentioned, talking about like not critical and all of that. Where does it come, like the idea like that I heard, that there could be a place like it, for pushing the husband, not like pushing in like classic like negative sense of pushing, like just like but in a healthy, I guess, friends way of pushing the husband. Like where could that come in, and how in a way that even though like yes it is my own haba is like my own spirituality, but like at the end of the day there is a certain amount of Ezer Connector that perhaps I could do with like the right, knowing the right beating like way to like push a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know any way to do it. I don't know any way to do it that'll work at all. I know every way that will fail, every way that'll backfire, every way that'll cause him to do the exact opposite of what you, especially when it's a wife to a husband. Have you ever heard of something called a male ego? Have you heard of it? No? Okay. So let me let you into what a male ego is. I love davening. I work on davening, and I'm very into davening. And notoriously, I come late. I come late on regular, and I beat myself up, and I work. And my wife would never ever dare tell me. She one time did it in 35 years. She one time said to me something about it, but that was it. She will never say to me, "Why don't you go on time to daven?" And she knows listen, I'm learning late. I should stop 15 minutes earlier, and she won't say. You know why? Because all she has to do is say the words and like, ooh. Now wait a minute. I get it that I'm late, and I want to, but whatever. So why don't I just change? I don't know. Again, I'm working on it, but again, it's been a couple of years now and haven't yet succeeded. But here's the point. The minute my wife helps me do it, it becomes such a source of friction. It becomes so, don't do it. Please do yourself the biggest chesed in the world. Your husband will grow as much as he will grow. He knows what you want. He knows what you like. Don't help him. Don't push. Don't do anything. Don't wake him up for minyan unless he asks you to. And don't remind him to say Kriya Shema unless he asks you to. Don't be his Rebbe. Don't be his mashgiach. Don't do it, because again, it destroys the relationship and it backfires. It causes the exact opposite. You see, when you push me, get me out of here. Just get me out of here. I don't want to do it. I don't know what to say. Listen.
I didn't hear it from I didn't hear it from a friend. I heard it from a very reputable source. That's why I'm asking the question that like not on those areas where like either not in a critical way, especially not on the areas that are like really hard for the husband, or like even if there's a way to like make it that it doesn't come off like I'm pushing. It comes off maybe more humorous and more friendly. Or more like,
don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's disastrous. Any way you do it, any way you couch it, it's going to backfire. The only thing you could do is let your husband know how much you're happy with his growth and his accomplishment, and he can know how chashuv it is that how much you machshav learning and how much. But you see, listen. Here, I'll give you. This is the classic example. Did I ever mention that I'm late? Okay, so I was a high school Rebbe for many years. And guess what? I was late to shir on a regular basis. Now, I had very good reasons. I talked to the guys over breakfast, etc. Lots of good reasons. But as I'm walking up to the shir every morning from breakfast, I would beat myself up. What's wrong with you? You're coming late to shir, bittul Torah Rab. And I was pretty harsh on myself. Reb Baruch Dvirutz, who was the menahel in the shir, was a very good friend of mine. One time, as I'm coming up late, he said something in a very gentle way, something like, maybe we could start shir a little earlier. Now, when he said those words to me, in my brain said the following: chutzpah, you're telling me to come on time? But here's the odd part. As I'm beating myself up for coming late, as I'm saying, what's wrong with you? His job, he's the menahel, and he's a good friend of mine, and he says it in the nicest way, and something like, what are you telling me? Why is that? What am I, some child? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me is I am a human being, and I don't like being bossed around. I don't like being told what to do. What can I tell? It's just I'm allergic. I'm allergic to people pointing their finger at me. I'm allergic to people telling me what to do. If they do it nicely, if they do it sweetly, it just bothers me. It doesn't make me feel good. And guess what? It doesn't accomplish anything, because in a marriage especially, the worst thing your husband could ever feel is that you look down on him. You don't approve of him. If in a marriage a husband feels that he doesn't have his wife's respect, it's going to be very, very difficult. A wife needs to know that her husband cherishes her. She needs to know that she's loved. And a husband needs to know that he's respected. And if a wife doesn't know that she's cherished, the marriage is going to be in a lot of trouble. And if a husband doesn't know that he's respected, the marriage is going to be in a lot of trouble. But both of those have to be there. She has to be cherished. He has to be respected, and the minute you tell him what to do, point it out, help him, push him, whatever it may be, you're treating him like a child. You're treating him like it doesn't end well. It never succeeds. It never accomplishes. All it does is wreck the relationship. So what you should do is be as encouraging and helpful and open as many opportunities for him to learn. And listen, you don't have to take care of the kids. You learn, you daven, I'll take care of the. If you're there for him as a support, you're there opening every door for him. That's great. But again, not you pushing him, not you,
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, Shaver, the questions are coming in. We gotta
Yeah.
pace it up.
Fast.
Okay, Yaeli, you're on. Give me a minute. Yaeli? One minute, Yaeli.
It's not unmuted. Let me see if I can unmute it.
That's not muted. Yeah.
No, it's still on. It says talking permitted, but it still says muted.
Yeah, he has to unmute on his side.
Oh. Yoli, if you can unmute. It still says muted. All right.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Let's
Yeah.
go to Ron.
Good evening.
Good evening. Hi.
Two interesting questions. One's a little bit of a follow-up, I think, on a question was asked earlier. Already mentioned about saying ouch to somebody.
Yep.
I had a scenario once or twice before
Where you
where
would
dealt with somebody. I dealt with people before where their personality would be, and when you would say ouch to them, then they'll take it as an attack a little bit, where they'll attack your case. What are you saying ouch for? Why do you feel that way? And then they would expect you to say more than just ouch. So how would you, in that scenario, still respond with ouch without?
Don't say a word. Just ouch. But what do you mean? What do you mean by ouch? Just ouch, ouch, ouch. You see, ouch is so innocent. Ouch just means you hurt me. It just means I'm hurt, and it doesn't mean even you hurt me. I'm hurt. I'm not pointing a finger at you. I'm hurt, and nothing. Now, it's not easy to do. Don't get me wrong. I wish I could do it all. It's not easy to do, but it is absolutely one of the most effective ways to deal with a person who's critical, a person who's, because what it's doing is basically, again, it's not escalating, it's not acting hostile, and what it does is it confronts them with a simple reality that they hurt you, and you're not retaliating, you're not saying why, it hurts me. But why does it hurt you? I don't know. I do. I'm sorry. I do. You mean you're critical of me? No, it hurt me. That's all.
All right, thank you.
Do we get cut off? I think we got cut off.
No,
There you go.
Yeah.
The The other second question I had was how do you differentiate to know whether or not you should learn about learning the skills to do it? When do you differentiate of figuring out when you should learn the skills to be able to tell somebody to do something or help them out or understand how to respond to them versus knowing when it's completely critical and not helpful whatsoever?
So I'm a little bit not, I don't hear the question exactly. I mean, the rule of thumb would be err on the side of caution. Generally speaking, people are not receptive at all whatsoever to unsolicited advice. And let's not go to criticism. Let's go way more powerful. Unsolicited advice is rarely accepted well. Why? Because, hey, buddy, if I needed advice, I would have asked somebody. I didn't ask you, don't go tell me. Certainly in a male's world. When it comes to women, there's a lot more flexibility there, and it's received a lot better. And oftentimes women will, offer unsolicited advice to their friends, and it'll be well received because it's within the women sort of circles. It's much easier to receive that. In a male world, if you offer unsolicited advice, you're really asking for a fight. Imagine a guy changing a tire, and you go, hey, listen, buddy, instead of doing it that way, if you did this way, you do better. What's his response? Oh, thank you so much for pointing out. Hey, buddy, what are you bugging in? What are you butting in? Who asked you? Meaning, it's ill-received. It's just poorly received. Why? And because we don't like being told things. We don't like people butting in. We don't like, who asked you? If I needed help, I'd have asked you. I didn't ask you. Please don't butt in. So the rule of thumb is unsolicited advice is rarely received well. Now, we try it all the time. We offer our advice all the time, and what happens is it backfires and it never works. And for some reason, we never learn the lesson that it doesn't work. So what can I tell you? Rule of thumb is err on the side of caution.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
A lot of people are texting different questions. We didn't get into it yet, but a lot of people are talking about kids. So let's start with a few questions on kids, Rabbi Schaefer.
Yeah, go for it. Let me hear.
How do we instruct and educate our children without sounding critical? My kids are kids. They make bad choices when it comes to sneaking food, fighting with their brother, refusing to brush their teeth, doing things that they need to be rebuked multiple times over and over. How do you instruct for the 30th time without sounding critical?
Okay, so the answer is you don't. With children, you need a disciplinary system. I prefer it if you could do it on the reward system. It's much better, but oftentimes you can't. The first thing you have to know more than any, the first thing you have to know is a child's currency. What does a child value? It could be reading time. It could be earning a book. It could be, you have to know their currency. Once you know the currency, then you have to set up a following system. You have to set up a system with many increments of consequences. So I'll give you a good, for instance, again, I much prefer something on the positive, but again, there are times when you can't do it and you have to use a negative. So let's use a negative consequence. Let's say, a child won't do whatever it is, so every night they're allowed to read for an hour, they're allowed an hour playtime. What happens is, any infraction, you lose 2 minutes of that time, but it's 2 minutes, or maybe even 1 minute. Because what happens invariably is the child steps over the line once and loses a minute. Child does it a second time, they lose 2 minutes. And your attitude is very calm. Listen, I'm sorry it has to be this way, but these are the rules. It's not me punishing, it's not me being critical. These are the rules. You step over the line, then this is what happens. And you mete out in very small increments the consequences. Now, usually what we do as parents is we blow it. We don't have any consequence system, and the child does something, and you're grounded for a week. You're grounded for the rest of your life. Until you're 18, you're not leaving the house. Now, obviously, what that does is nothing, because all you do is you threw away any power you had. If you have a very clear consequence system, again, knowing the child's currency, and you have it broken down to incredibly small increments, you'd be shocked at how powerful it is. A minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and the child stops, because all you got to do is add another one, and the child knows, as long as you remember one rule. The rule is what you say, you do. No second warnings, no second chances, and it's not me against you. These are the consequences. Listen, I'm sorry it has to be this way. If you smash your fist into the wall, it hurts your fist. If you violate these rules, this is what happens. It's not me. I'm not upset. But unfortunately, but me, please, can I have another chance? Yes, another chance tomorrow night. You can have another chance. Next week, you can have another chance. But right now, this is what the consequence is. And once you do that, and your child knows that you mean business, And again, you small increments, you meet it out. It works like a charm. Does it solve all of mankind's problems? No, but most, yes.
Interesting question. Somebody just texted into the box over here. If you in your experience with people, if a spouse doesn't stop criticizing, even after you ask multiple times, what strategy would you implement? How do you get through to her that she is damaging the marriage?
Send it to the marriage seminar, send it to the marriage transformation boot camp, get her a copy of Dale Carnegie's book. I don't know.
That's criticizing.
No, I'm not criticizing. No, I just want to, let's watch this together. Let's listen to this together. There's this very interesting shir. Let's listen to it. I don't know what to tell you. You see, usually, it really depends on what the situation is. It's very hard to answer because it really, I would have to have a little bit more details of why she's complaining, what she's complaining about, what his, receptivity to it. It's very hard for me to answer that. Toshi, you stumped me. I don't have an answer.
Something. I win.
$100, Toshi. Somebody's got to pay him. Who?
That's right.
I don't
have
know.
to be able to pay back.
Uh-huh.
How many more questions, Rabbi Schaefer? Because I have a lot more.
A couple more. We're running down, but a few more. Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to the kid subject. This is a very interesting one. I try to learn with my son every night.
Great.
You see where this is going?
Uh-huh.
I believe it's a father's achrayus to teach every child, not the school. Very few times does he come willingly. It's usually a huge struggle. And when we manage to learn, he doesn't know the material, so I try to teach it to him. Why is he not participating? Doesn't he know it's my task to teach him?
Right. So let me tell you something I learned long ago. In most situations, the child is not able to learn from the father. What can I tell you? It should be different. Mashiach will come imminently, and it will be different. But right now, under most circumstances, it doesn't work well at all. It doesn't work well. My advice to you would be hire a tutor. You could be twice as big a Talmid Chacham. You could be a better Rebbe. It doesn't matter. By the way, I have children, and I could tell you many times I don't learn with them. I hire other people, and not that I'm a bad Rebbe. I think I was decent as a Rebbe. I think a lot of times, whatever the reason, the relationship, it doesn't work. So my answer to you would be, your responsibility is the chinuch of your child, but to be effective. If it's not working with you and him, right, find somebody. It could be just a younger guy, maybe somebody who's 19. And he doesn't have to know much, but your son looks at him as like a cool guy who he relates to, not his old father, and all of a sudden, boom, it's a different world. So my recommendation would be find somebody else who he does relate to, he can learn with. And your job is not to teach your child, your job is to make sure your son gets good chinuch. And if in fact it's not working with you and him, good. Find somebody who it does work with, and let that be the catalyst for his growth.
There happens to be my son also, and a lot of the schools in Lakewood, they're very pro hiring tutors. They're very anti the father learning with them in general, so you know that.
Yeah.
One more, Rabbi Schaefer?
Yep,
One
go
more?
for it, please.
It's a question from a teen.
From a teen.
Thank you, Rebbe, for the shmuz, and I really appreciate them. My question is, I'm 18 years old. I'm about to go to camp. My parents are really making me crazy. Every detail. Where am I going? Who am I talking to? Who's my friends? Where am I sleeping? With whom? What am I doing? For years. But I think it's about time to let it go. Should I tell them?
Yeah. I would go home for Out Shabbosim every 4 to 6 weeks or so. And every time before I went home for an Out Shabbos, I would learn the Gemara in Kedushin about Kibbud Av V'Aim, and what the obligations of a child is to his father, to his mother. So let me tell you very quickly, and I don't mean this critically, but I'll say, here, let's do a little math. How much money did your parents spend so far for your existence? So from birth to 18 in the United States of America, the cost of raising a child is at least $250,000. However, that does not include yeshiva tuition. That does not include kosher food. That does not include tefillin and everything else that we do in terms of being a frum person. If you just understand the monetary expenditure that your parents put out for your good, it's probably $300,000-$400,000. Now, that's step one. Step number two is, what do your parents want? All they want is one thing: your benefit. What's good for you. Is it annoying? I get it. It's annoying. I get it. There's no question that parents often do things that are annoying. I know. I'm a parent. Okay, I got it. But at the end of the day, your parents are the mative, the givers, the ones who benefit. More than that, my grandmother Allah Shalom used to say to me all the time, remember, your only friends are your parents. When it comes push to shove, after everything's said and done, if Rahman you're in the hospital or something very serious, the only people who are going to be there for you, not your friends, not your buddies, your parents. So at the end of the day, I think it's very, very important that you remember how much you owe to your parents, how much they do for you, and more than anything, that they only want one thing, your benefit, what's best for you. Now, they're misguided in your understanding. Could be they're not so misguided, because keep in mind, you're 18 and they're at least 38 or 48, and they probably have a lot more life wisdom, a lot more understanding. So it could be that they have, but even let's grant that they're misguided and you got it right. The bottom line is, there should be such a sense of appreciation and such a deep debt of gratitude that you say, okay, they're doing it for my good, they're misguided, but okay, let me put up with it, let me solve it, even for a little bit longer. I think if you take that attitude, you'll find suddenly it's very different. If you realize you made Mekayim a mitzvah's essay by doing this, and you're acting the way Hashem wants, suddenly become a lot lighter and a lot easier for you to be solve the inordinate amount of questions and tough times they put you through. And I say those words tongue in cheek. So bottom line is, I think you have to think about it from a little bit of a different perspective. Coach Menachem would say, I was too tough, I was too hard. What can I tell you? I'm telling you, it's I believe that is the right attitude that you should have.
Okay. Hear that. One more?
One more, last one. Let's make it the last one. Yep.
Completely nothing to do with tonight's topic, but it's a good question. How does one have good shalom bias if their husband is on the spectrum? It's ASD. I don't know, ASD on the spectrum, and sees things extremely black and white and is lacking in his social area.
The autism spectrum disorder, and really, when we say spectrum, it's because it's a spectrum. There are many gradations in it. That is exactly the problem with it. One of the great disabilities is social skills and social awareness. Empathy typically is lacking, and certainly understanding how other people react to things. One of the hallmarks of that in general is what's called mind blind. Mind blind is where I assume the way I feel is the way everyone feels, the way I look at things, the way everyone looks at things. Now, for the record, we all have that. We all do it in different ways, in different grades. But the bottom line is, it is very difficult. So, what can I tell you? I wish I had a good solution to that. What is often very helpful is to ask yourself one thing: is he choosing to do this? Is he doing this purposely? Now, you see, what happens is, a lot of times when you realize, Rahman son, your husband, let's say your husband's in a wheelchair, and you realize he didn't choose that, he didn't want that, Nebuch is there, and there's a sense of Rahmanis, and it becomes a lot easier for you to deal with. If you recognize that that is a liability, it's a disability, much like a physical handicap, and you realize he's not doing it to be mean, he's not doing it because he's callous, he's acting that way because he doesn't realize, he doesn't understand, he doesn't get it. If you can focus on that single reality, that he's not doing it willfully, he's not doing it purposely, Nebuch, this is, so I think it makes it a lot easier to be sovelit, and I think with that sort of attitude, you can be a lot more gracious, cutting a lot more slack, and hopefully that can make a significant difference in your general dealing with your husband, and hopefully it makes something of a difference.
Before we end, if somebody texted, how do they want to listen this particular shmuz? How could they get that?
Okay, so we send out the email, we send out the replay. If you're registered for the webinar, for sure you get the replay. If not, it's going to be on the site shortly. So meantime, send me an email at rebbe@theshmuz.com, rebbe@theshmuz.com. Let me again just mention again before I forget. So the Shmuz book is available, 2 Worlds, 1 Chance. If you go to book, book.theshmuz.com, the book is free. All I ask is that you participate in the shipping cost. But if you go there, book, book.theshmuz, theshmuz.com, and get a copy of the free Shmuz book. Also, there's a WhatsApp group, 845-216-9330. 3-4 times a week, we send out short videos, chizuk. It's a Shmuz chizuk WhatsApp group. If you'd like to join, just send a message. Please sign me up to 845-216-9330, as well as the shmuz.com. All the shmuzim are available, and etc. Right, that's really it. So Ushi, I want to thank you very much. I want to thank everyone for coming. Ushi, thank you so much for moderating. It really helped it tremendously and really added a lot. And okay, I hope everyone has an easy fast, and Mitzvah Hashem will see the Binyan Beis Hamikdash. Oh, before I forget, one more thing. Also, if you would like to see their, number one, the Torah Anytime has a live broadcast Tisha B'Av all day long. You can just go to Torah Anytime, and you'll see I'm speaking at 1 o'clock, or just about 1 o'clock. In addition to that, I believe I'm going to do a live webinar later on in the day. Look for the Shmuz email. If you're not on the Shmuz email list, send me an email. I'll put you on the list, rebbe@theshmuz.com, REBBE @theshmuz.com, and I'll let you know when I'll be doing.
Next Wednesday, there's no share. Right?
There's no share Wednesday night, right? But I believe during the day I hope to do a shir and some kind of Q&A on it as well. Okay.
Good night,
Okay, Yoshi, thank you. Good night, everyone. Thank you for coming. Okay, wish you much tzlacha.